Michelle Jenkins with Grandma Michelle's Art, and today we're going to do an experiment. I would like to see if it matters that do we need a pouring medium. So I'm going to use the soft-bodied paint like a Liquitex or an Amsterdam, and we're going to add pouring medium to one batch and add just water to another batch. And see what happens. See if the paints bind together, see if they pour well. My hypothesis is going to be that the pigment maybe not as defined, let's say, in the one where we use just water, that maybe the pigments won't bind together. But I'm willing to be wrong. So let's see if we need to have a pouring medium. So I'll be back. I'm gonna get set up. Okay, I'm back. So before we get started, I wanted to tell you what I decided to use. I'm going to be using the Creative Inspirations line, and I'm going to use yellow ochre, olive green, raw sienna, and Payne's Gray. And we're going to hope I have enough Payne's Gray to get through this. And I'm also going to use the Deco Art pouring medium, which I discovered is a little thin on the thin side, but I'm okay with that since this experiment is to use paint and pouring medium against paint and water, which will also be thin. So let's see if we can see the difference in the water and the pouring medium, even if they're both thin. I did a little bit of math before I got started. I wanted to tell you what I discovered. The pouring medium I found online at Amazon for $19.40 for a 64-ounce bottle. That's 30 cents an ounce. The Creative Inspirations for a 6-pack of 120 milliliter paint is $17.79. That's 74 cents an ounce. So the paint is more expensive than the pouring medium. And when I consider what I'm going to be using is an 8x10 canvas, just the little cardboard canvas, I'll actually be using 2 of those. It's going to require about 3 ounces of paint, and the way I find that out is 8x10 is 80 divided by 28 is a little less than 3 ounces. I'm actually probably going to be using a little more than 3 ounces, but 3 ounces is really what's required for the pour for that size canvas. So I did the math on 3 ounces. What I discovered is with the pouring medium, I'm going to probably use about 1.5 ounces of paint and 1.5 ounces of pouring medium. The paint is going to cost $1.11 and the pouring medium is going to cost 45 cents. So to pour with the Deco Art pouring medium onto this 8x10 canvas board, the materials, the paint and pouring medium is going to cost $1.56. Contrarily, when I use paint with just water, I'm going to have to use more paint, and that would be 3 ounces of paint, which is $2.22, and I didn't count in the cost of the distilled water. So just to reiterate, to pour with paint and water costs more, $2.22 versus paint with a pouring medium, $1.56. So like I said, I'm actually going to be using more than 3 ounces. I'll probably be at least 4 ounces because I've got 4 colors. So the cost difference would be higher the more paint you use. So that's interesting to note. And I'm going to go ahead and start mixing my colors, and I will be back with you to do the last color. Thanks. Okay, so I've mixed up 3 of the colors. I've mixed up the yellow ochre, the raw sienna, and the Payne's Gray. Interestingly, for the Creative Inspirations, the Payne's Gray is quite blue, which actually I love. So first things to notice before I mix these other colors up is that there's about twice as much fluid, twice as much mix in the mix that has the pouring medium in it. You'll notice that I have twice as much paint where I'm going to put the water, and about half as much paint for the pouring medium. So I did end up having to add water to the pouring medium mix because I wanted to get it the same consistency as with just the water. So my consistency is, can you see that? Let's see, this is with the pouring medium, just a little bit of a mound. And this is with water. It's about the same. There's a lot more bubbles in the one with just the water. And actually, it's way more creamier with the pouring medium. A little frothier, if you will. And I find the color to be a little bit different. So there's going to be twice as much pigment in the mix that has just water because we're using twice as much paint. So it'll be interesting to see how that translates to the canvas when it's dry, because the pigment's actually all that's left once the painting is complete. The acrylic binder that's in the paint dries clear, and the pouring medium dries clear, and of course the water evaporates. So all that's left is the pigment on the canvas, and we're using half as much pigment when we use a pouring medium. So when I add the water to this mix, I'm only adding a little bit at a time because the paint needs to expand and contract in order to be able to accept the water. So I add just a little bit at a time and get that stirred up. These particular craft sticks do the job for stirring, but when it comes to checking consistency, I'm really not a fan. They're just a little thin or something. It's hard to get it to flow off of the stick. And so now we're going to add just water to this one. So because we have twice as much pigment, I became curious about the density and whether we would get cells. Now, I'm not expecting to get any cells because there's no water added. There's no oil added. With Floetrol, it's my theory that there's oil in the Floetrol, which is why it produces cells. And with glue as well. That's why there's not as many cells with Liquitex and GAC, because the recipe for the pouring medium doesn't include oil. In this case, we're not using any oil. Unless the DecoArt pouring medium has oil in it, which I doubt. Most pouring mediums, from my experience, don't have much in it. So it'll be interesting to see if we get any cells. I was going to try to layer by density, and so I looked up the Golden density chart. You can use that across brands because pigments are generally the same. Unfortunately, I guess Golden doesn't have on their chart the olive green and the Payne's gray, so I don't know what the density of those two are. So we may or may not get lucky with density. I think I'm going to put blue on top though, because blue falls pretty well into the titanium white in my experience. And I did find that the yellow ochre and the raw sienna have about the same amount of density to them. So, and they're 3.5, which is pretty high up there. So I think those two will be used as top layers. So we have our paints, and I'm gonna get my canvas ready.